Do you wonder whether you were raised by emotionally immature parents? If you were, then it's likely had an impact on your mental or emotional well-being as an adult now. And so today I'm going to talk to you about specifically what emotional parenting looks like and give you really specific examples so that you can get more clarity about whether or not this is something that you went through, and hopefully it'll help to explain a lot and give you some clarity and understanding that you've been looking for. But right before that, if you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comment section below if you are back again. It is always good to have you here. Special shout out to my shifters. So good to have you here for these talks as well. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, the button's about right down there. Like the video if you get something out of it, that would be amazing. And either way, my name is Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my incredible membership community where there are heart-centered humans going through and doing this work at a deeper level and being supported and held accountable the whole way through. If that's something that you are like, I want to know more about this, then you can get more information about the Shift Society in the description below. I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And having been raised by emotionally immature parents can definitely have a long-term impact and can be what's contributing to the things that you are struggling with or being held back by now. So we're going to talk about specifically what emotionally immature parenting looks like so you can kind of get more insight as to whether this is something that you did in fact experience. As a caveat, I want to say that this isn't about bashing or blaming our parents for all of our problems. Parents are just older humans who a lot of times didn't know what they were doing, hadn't dealt with their own stuff, and so couldn't be the types of parents that we needed them to be or that we deserved them to be, or even often that they wanted to be. Parenting is a very hard job, and if we haven't done our own work, it makes it even harder. So this isn't about passing the buck or blaming. This is about trying to develop our own understanding so we can be moving forward with our own healing and our own growth. So the first sign that you were raised by emotionally immature parents is if you found that when things didn't go your parents' way, they acted like children. When things didn't go, when you didn't do what they wanted them to do, when things in their life with their friends or with their work or with each other didn't go the way that they wanted, they threw tantrums. They threw fits, they called names, they yelled, they got like just kind of explosive, or they went the other way and pouted or gave the silent treatment or, ghosted you out and just sort of created like so much space that you felt completely alone or isolated, or they were really good at just blaming other people all the time or blaming you for their emotional reactions, saying things like, well, if you hadn't done this and I wouldn't have done that, and it's your fault that I acted this way and it's because of you, and kind of blamed you for any of their emotional outbursts. Or you noticed that they would badmouth other people a lot if things didn't go their way. Say their friends canceled plans or served a meal that they didn't like, or planned to do something that they thought was kind of ridiculous, and they kind of badmouth them behind their back. Or what were they thinking? Like, they're so selfish, or they're so ridiculous, or they don't think about anyone else, or what's their problem? They would just sort of badmouth people behind their back for things that those people hadn't really actually overtly done that were bad or mean or harmful or even intentionally hurtful. So you found that they would often do that, just sort of act like a child. Blame, deflect blame, criticize, give the silent treatment, and that's how they dealt with their own disappointment or with their own expectations that weren't met. The next sign that you were raised by emotionally immature parents is that when you were going through something hard or stressful and you came to them with it, they found some way to make it about themselves. So maybe you're like, I got in trouble today at school for talking to my friend while the teacher was talking, and I thought she was done. I thought it was okay to talk, but then I got in trouble and I got a detention, or the teacher got really angry with me and I was so embarrassed, and it just like made me so upset, and it wasn't fair. And their parent was like, well, like, how do you think that makes me feel? I'm the parent of the child who's getting in trouble. I'm the parent of the child who's getting, reprimanded in front of the whole class. What do you think they're going to think of me? What are the kids going to think of me? They're going to tell their parents? What does the teacher think of me? They're going to think that I'm raising a troublemaker. They found some way to turn it on you. They would find some way to make their problems about how it impacts their own life. Or say you came to them with like problems that you were having with a friend, and you're like, I'm really struggling with this friend, and she hasn't been very nice to me, or she's been leaving me out of stuff. And your parent is like, well, I know that happens to me all the time. Like, I know how much it sucks. And like, don't you think that I haven't had to deal with things like that too? Like, think about how hard it is for me when other people leave me out, or when things don't go my way. Yeah, I know how hard it is. And they're not saying it in like an empathic, like, yeah, I can totally relate to that, or I can tell how you feel because something similar has happened to me before. And, isn't it hurtful? And just offering that compassion and empathy in that kind of way by relating, versus like making it about themselves. So essentially, when you went to them with one of your problems, they would talk about how it was difficult for them, how it was stressful for them, how it was upsetting for them, how it impacted them in a negative way. They would somehow make it about them, and maybe even you found that you would find yourself comforting them about your problem. And it felt very confusing in your brain, but that's just how it went. The next sign that you were raised by emotionally immature parents is your parents often, one or both, maybe not even both, but one of your parents often confided in you. They came to you about their problems, about their marriage problems, their work problems, their sex life problems, their problems with their friends, their struggles with their own mental health issues or their addiction issues. And they came to you not as just like, oh, this is really hard right now. But you know the difference when someone's just kind of venting, but you know that they're just venting and they can deal with it themselves, versus someone who's coming to like unload their problems onto you, and you feel like now it's your burden to carry, or it's your responsibility or yours to fix. And you feel that heaviness, you feel that anxiety, you feel that stress. You feel the burden of their problem. They're looking to you to do something about it, to make it better, to fix it. And as a child, that was absolutely not your responsibility. And it was not okay that your parent did that. They came to you as ultimately a peer, or even like a guide, right? Like some kind of advice giver or counselor or coach. It's the parent's job to be there for the child, to support the child. It's the parent's job to be the one that the child comes to talk about their problems with, to go to for help and support and guidance, not the other way around. And so that is another sign that your parents didn't have enough emotional maturity to know that that's not appropriate. And if they're struggling with something or someone, they need to go to an actual peer or an actual guide, a therapist, a coach, someone else who is in a leadership role, or can offer them some support in that isn't their own child. The fourth sign that you were raised by emotionally immature parents is that when you came to them with a problem, they invalidated it. You came to them about something that you were struggling with, and they had a knack for saying things like, oh, you shouldn't complain about that. There are people who go through so much worse. Or, oh, it's not that big of a deal. That's not really something to complain about. You should like come up with something that's really real to complain about, because there are definitely people who do in this world who do have real problems. This is not a real problem. Or how come you're always getting so upset about things? You should just like let it go. Like you should just learn to be tougher about things. You shouldn't let things get to you. And maybe even they had some good intentions with that, like trying to help you not let things get to you. But the first response when you go to someone with a problem, with anyone at any age, if they tell you to just let it go or not let it get to you, how do you immediately feel? Do you feel like relieved? Are you like, oh, don't let it get to me. Okay, I feel better now. Or are you like, wow, I feel shut down. I feel invalidated. I feel unheard. I feel alone because this person doesn't care. They don't have time. They're not for even just like offering me a listening ear for a minute. They just want me to get over it. What I'm dealing with doesn't matter. And so you feel even more alone, or maybe you feel a little bit angry or resentful to be like, hey, like, that's not helpful. That doesn't make me feel any better. It just makes me feel worse. Like, I just want to feel heard. You have that kind of tension inside. You're like, that sucked as a response. And maybe you went through that as a child as well, where when you did come, they would absolutely invalidate you or just tell you to let it go. And it didn't help you feel better. It just made you feel more alone, more unheard, more misunderstood, and even more sad. The next sign that you were dealing with or raised by emotionally immature parents is, this is kind of a little bit of a subtle one, and it can show up in different ways. But if you kind of had this underlying feeling that it wasn't okay for you to spend time with friends or with family members that were outside of your immediate family, where you felt this like responsibility to spend most of your time with your family, and you couldn't really figure out why, but you almost felt like guilty or bad or weird about spending time with other people, or maybe you felt weird about telling your parents that you were spending time with other people outside of the family, and you couldn't really figure out why. You're like, why do I not want to tell them about this? Or why do I kind of hold back from bringing friends over for dinner, for after school, for to hang out? And it could have been because there was this expectation that you don't do things with other people, that your parents would almost be jealous if you spent time with people outside of the family. They didn't want to share you. They felt threatened by you having other relationships or valuing or being close with other people other than them. This one is kind of a weird one, and it's a subtle one. And maybe right now a light bulb is going on in your head and you're like, oh my gosh, yes, I always felt guilty about being out with other people, and I couldn't really figure out why. And likely it's because there were covert messages around jealousy, that your parents would say things like, oh, you don't want to spend time with us? Or, oh, like, why are you spending time with them? Like, why are they so great? Or why would you want to be with them and not with us? Or, aren't we good enough for you? Or, something like that. Or they just sort of find ways to kind of pick anyone that you were friends with or other family members that you want to spend time with. They just sort of like pick them apart. And in these little subtle ways, like underhanded remarks and stuff that made you feel like, oh, like they don't really like them, and so I shouldn't bring them around, or maybe I shouldn't spend time with them. And it could have been this very kind of covert jealousy, that they wanted you all to themselves and they were too emotionally immature to let you have other relationships, other meaningful or close relationships, without them feeling threatened by that. The sixth sign that you were raised by emotionally immature parents is if they ever told you that you owed them for all they do for you. If they ever said things like, you owe me for this, or you have to do this because I gave you a roof over your head. Not like, hey, you need to pitch in and you need to, clean up your room or help out with the cleanup after supper because you're a member of this family and we do all these things together and we're all here to work together and to help out. And so it's not just one person's responsibility, but you didn't feel like you owed your parents, like they were doing you a favor by raising you and clothing you and feeding you. Those are not favors. Those are basic responsibilities of parents to children, of grown-up to child. That is not a favor. That is baseline responsibility. So maybe you felt shame if you weren't doing exactly what your parent wanted you to do or how they wanted you to do it all the time. You felt like you were being a bad girl or a bad boy or a bad kid if you didn't always comply with what they wanted. They were almost using this emotional blackmail with you, like, you owe me. You have to comply to everything all the time. You have no autonomy or free will in this family because you owe me, because I raised you, or I'm raising you, or I'm giving you a roof over your head, or I'm feeding you. That is a sign of emotionally immature parents. Now, how can this being raised by emotionally immature parents impact us as adults? It can absolutely result in things like struggling with anxiety or depression or low self-esteem or a really low sense of self-worth. It can cause us to question who we are, to not know who we are, because there was never really real space for us to be who we are. And it can make us really not know ourselves very well, or not trust that who we are is good enough. So we feel like we have to be or become something or someone else in order to be worthy of love or approval. If that is something that you struggle with, then learning how to be yourself without apology is going to really help you on this healing and growth journey. I have a guide for you. It's the simple steps to be yourself without apology that is in the description below. And really getting started on learning how to reparent yourself in a more emotionally mature way. Being more kind to yourself, more compassionate towards yourself, listening to yourself, validating your own feelings, all the things that you didn't get from your emotionally immature parents, learning how to give it to yourself now. All the things that you wanted, all the things that you needed, all the things that you missed out on, doing that reparenting within yourself to be that emotionally safe and mature parent that you absolutely deserved, but that not all parents had the skills or the abilities or the resources, or sometimes even the desire to be. We don't always know why. Often they're dealing with their own stuff, which is preventing them from being who their children need them to be. And so we're not here to cast a bunch of blame. We're just here to understand, and to understand how that has impacted us so that we can be moving forward for ourselves by doing that healing and growth. Grab that 6 simple ways to be yourself without apology. Be compassionate and kind to yourself. Be good to those around you. And until next time, take good care. Not sure why I pointed. Take good care.